Chapter 14. Farewell.
The weather was brisk when they landed from the air. Theraint had arranged for Tiffany's cremation quietly. Amy wished she could let her parents know what had happened. However, since that night they'd been attacked, they had gone missing to the normal world. They had driven to the house where Tiffany's ashes sat in an urn. Amy ran her hand along it and silently spoke to her sister. Tears flowed freely from her eyes. They went to sleep soon after. Even Amy, who had a hard time finding calm, finally slipped off to sleep. In the morning they got up and drank some coffee, then loaded the SUV up and started to drive up to a lake where Amy had suggested they say their final goodbyes. They walked out onto the shores of the lake where the four of them had camped so often. The air crisp and cold. Amy did her best to hold her emotions in check, but as they approached the water they all started to lose control over those emotions. Amy spread her ashes out onto the lake, tears welling in her eyes. "I'm gonna miss you, sis," Amy whispered. Taylor laid a hand on her shoulder. "We all will," Taylor said. She fell into his arms, her grief trumped only by her anger. They stood on the shore for near an hour. Then slowly they made their way back to the SUV. Teraint pulled out and drove out to the main road. Taylor looked back at the lake. It would never be the same for him. Nothing will ever be the same, he thought to himself, tears welling in his eyes, for Tiffany, for Scott, for a life he had chosen to leave behind.
Teraint had warned in the beginning that everything would change.
Although Taylor had anticipated many of the changes, others he had not been prepared for at all. As with all change, the good comes with bad. Although the last few months had been difficult, this was the first thing that had caused him true pain. His grief for his parents now replaced with grief for a life that was no longer his. They drove back to Theraint's house. No one spoke more than a few words on the half-an-hour drive down the canyon. Amy stared out the window, anger in her growing. She loved Scott almost as much as she loved her sister. However, her rage at him would not subside. She could not let this go. This was not a mistake. It was an act that defined Scott, that showed he had gone too far down the dark roads of his mind. She felt he would never be able to come back, and she did not know if she wanted him to.
Taylor was having similar thoughts. His brother had made an extremely wrong turn.
Taylor did not have much faith that he would ever be able to turn back. They pulled up to the house and went in, and although a meal was laid out when they arrived, they hardly ate anything. Trisha and Taylor took some time to be by themselves. She sat holding him on the couch. "You all right?" Trisha asked after a few moments. "Seems like you have to ask me that a lot lately," Taylor replied grimly. "Just worried about you," Trisha replied. "I know, I just feel like I'm falling apart in front of you," Taylor sighed. "No, you're dealing with things that I can hardly imagine. I don't think anyone could say that they understand what you're going through," Trisha said. "The important thing is that you know that I am not watching you fall apart. I'm here to help you through anything we run into. I don't know about you, but I think of your problems as our problems," Trisha said. Taylor leaned in and gave her a hug. "I don't know how much I can take," Taylor said, and sobbed into her shoulder. "I know it's hard, baby," Trisha said, "but I also know that you're the strongest person I've ever met. I have faith in you, and I will be right here always," Trisha said. Taylor looked into her eyes for a moment. "I love you, Trish," he said, and kissed her. He dried the tears and started to put on his bravest face. They walked out into the front room where Amy and Teraint sat talking quietly, much as Trisha had done for Taylor. Teraint tried to calm her, but even with all his experience, he had to search hard for the words that would match his situation. "You okay?" Amy asked Taylor. "I don't know what's okay anymore, but I'm still here," Taylor said, as bravely as he could muster. "Me too," Amy assured him. There was a moment where Taylor and Amy locked eyes, and each knew what the other was thinking. They would have to put away the pain for now. The sun began to sink in the horizon. Taylor was past his emotions, but his mind still ran wild. They sat and watched as the lights of the city began to come out. Trisha encouraged Taylor and Amy to eat something, and they both made an effort, although neither of them ate a great deal. After a small meal, they all walked out onto the deck. They all seemed to know that one problem needed to be solved and would no longer wait.